Hi, welcome back. I wanted to get Ellie's impression on a couple videos about Mercedes' new Level 3 being deployed. I think it's got the go-ahead in Nevada, might in California at some point this year. Now, technically, it's not coming until the end of the year when the vehicles that will have this system engaged in the U.S. will be produced. But a couple weeks ago, you did a FSD test with me.
Yeah.
Where you took FSD out for your first time. Mm-hmm. So you've got a little better handle on that other than just being a passenger. And so I wanted to get your impressions from what you experienced to what Mercedes is doing with their Level 3 system, since Tesla is still technically Level 2. We're going to take a look at a video that's kind of been circulating a lot lately, but the guy doesn't get a lot of credit as it's being circulated. It's a video from Motoman TV, and I'll put a link down to it in the description below. Last year, he took a ride in Germany on a test track with some of the engineers and got an impression, and some interesting things happened. And we're going to jump into about 2.5 minutes in when he actually starts doing this test drive. Let's take a look.
We are on the oval course now, which is our highway on these premises.
A highway that has a traffic jam.
Yeah, we have a traffic jam. Here you go.
And happens to be that every car in the traffic jam is a Mercedes.
Well, things happen. So could you please turn on your Level 2 system? Just press set.
Okay, so set here.
Yep.
So I'm at 60.
So they've set up a simulated kind of traffic jam situation, and now he is going to enable the system.
And this is as if I would be in a serial production S-Class with a normal Level 2 system.
Exactly.
And for the avoidance of doubt, the only hardware difference inside the vehicle are these buttons on the steering wheel.
Exactly. So
now we're engaged, activating Drive Pilot, and now hands off the wheel.
Yep, it tells you remain ready to take control.
Okay.
But the responsibility is with us now.
At this point, they're in their Level 3 system. He's able to take his hands off the wheel, do other things, but he still has to pay attention for those nags that will be coming up. Ellie saved most of her thoughts for the end of the video, so I'm going to interject a couple points, cut this down, and we'll get to her comments soon.
So when we say the responsibility is with you, what's exactly happening between you and the government for that to happen?
We have to prove that we are capable of dealing with tricky situations, which we will encounter some of them in this demonstrations that you see. But the most important thing for you as a customer while driving in Level 3 is you can do side activities legally. You can, for example, if you want, on the head unit, hit the home button, go to apps, and hit the browser. And if you want, you can open your own homepage, for example. You can do your emails. You can watch TV. And of course, we have our own thresholds that we have to meet, and we have our own tests we do, which are far more than what we have to do from a legal point of view to deal with the what-ifs. The important thing is driving is the easy part of autonomous driving. It's what happens if something unexpected occurs.
This is one of these scenarios.
Yeah.
I've got a stop truck.
You've got a stop truck.
Is the car... Oh, so he's going to go.
He's going to go, and you don't have to do anything. See? There he is.
So unlike a Level 2, it would have turned off at that point.
Exactly.
After, was it 30 seconds?
Yeah, 30 seconds on a highway, 15 seconds on a normal road.
So here they're talking about the Level 2 system versus the Level 3. And in their Level 2 system, if you're stopped behind a vehicle in traffic for more than 30 seconds, it sounds like, the Level 2 system just shuts off, which is weird to me. It's good that their Level 3 system doesn't, but it's just a little odd, especially when they talk about mode confusion later on, that they would have a system where you think it's reacting to, doing adaptive cruise, and then, oh, it was 32 seconds. You're no longer doing that. You better pick up to catch up and close the gap. So just an interesting feature distinction between their Level 2 and Level 3 here.
And it never warns you to put your hands back on unless there's a situation with the system which the system cannot cope with. But even if you don't react then, the car would come to a safe stop. Even if something failed, we always have up to 10 seconds to either take over when there's a request, which will be very clear, and you'll see that later.
So now
we have a stopped vehicle.
We're going around a stalled car.
Yeah. And there's even two of them.
The system is smart enough to pick that up.
Yeah, and we even go around the second one.
Okay.
See?
A little bit delayed there. That one was a little bit slower.
Just for the safe side, first it picked up that car, and then it saw, okay, somebody else is going. I have another lead vehicle, which I need.
Okay.
Technically. And so then it picked up this car, and then it kept going.
Now let me interject here. This is telling me there's an interrupt screen. Remain ready to take control of the vehicle.
Got to press OK. Yep, exactly.
How often does it do that?
It does that when it doesn't see both of your eyes anymore.
Is it a sunglasses thing, or is
no?
it
It's
just
because you had
turned
turned to me too long. You have about 5 seconds to look to the back, to turn away, but we don't allow to close your eyes even.
Do you have an issue with polarized sunglasses?
No. It's made so you can look, of course, to the front and to your head unit here.
We'll talk more about this in a minute, but I just wanted to note the nag from him looking away is happening while he's in the level 3 system, and I have some thoughts about that. Let's keep going.
That's also one of the reasons why we were looking very hard in mode confusion scenarios. When this turns off, you're driving manually. We don't want you to be in mode confusion, okay? And if you jump back from 3 to 2, it feels very much the same, but it's your responsibility. So that's when we take over, you take over, and then you decide. Going up, you can go 0 to 3, but going down, it goes from 3 to 0, so to speak. Pay attention.
Someone tried to cut me off.
See? And you weren't even paying attention. So my job worked because my job is to distract you.
You're good at it.
I've done it a couple times.
Okay, we got these guys doing this.
Of course, you have to imagine there's completely congested traffic.
Yeah.
We have about, I think, 7 cars around in this scenario, just for efficiency reasons.
Now, is this system a function? We talked a little bit earlier about all of the hardware on the outside of the vehicle. Is it also using mapped roads for this?
Yes.
So there are certain roads this would not work on.
Right. At the moment, we're using it only on restricted access highways, so it would be interstates in the US and major state highways, which are both directions are divided, and restricted access, so no traffic lights, no cross traffic.
Here comes the interrupt screen again. So is it sensing? Well, now it's gone now.
Yeah. I'm distracting you too much. But
This conversation is distracting you too much, but feel free to play games and check your email and do all those other things. Again, this seemingly frequent nag issue is something that really surprised me. More later.
Now, can I adjust the distance based on the sensor here? That's
not in level 3.
That's a difference between level 2 and 3.
In level 2, you're in the loop. You can go down to 1 second, approximately. But not farther than that, or closer than that, because, of course, then...
Okay, now
you have to take over.
Why is that?
Probably because the sun is blinding so much. Okay.
Drive pilot off, system currently unavailable.
Yep. And now
so
we've
run into a technical limitation, so I've turned a little bit.
No, we have turned a little bit, and now you can turn it on again.
There we go.
There it is.
Activating drive pilot.
Yep.
Could not be activated.
Because he's too...
So let me catch up.
Close up a little bit, because we need that lead vehicle.
So how much distance do we need between the lead vehicle?
It's about 100 meters.
Okay, so now activating drive pilot, and now it's...
And of course, this is a very specific situation. You would not encounter that on a real highway.
Yeah.
The sloped curve.
Now here's a section where 3 things happen at once, and it goes by pretty quick. So I just want to talk through this. First, the system says he needs to take over, which he does, and that's seemingly because the sun is too much glare on the camera. So he tries to re-enable it, but there are another couple possible issues here. They're on too high of a banked curve, or there's too much space between him and the car in front of him. All I'm sure based on their safety and technical requirements before they're willing to take that responsibility again. In a second here, though, he does say these are situations you're not going to find on the road. I'm not sure how accurate that is, but that's, again, what they're requiring to use their system for them to be liable.
They told us we want to get back time.
This guy is crazy.
Oh.
And the car honked.
And the car honked and told you better take control now.
Okay.
Okay, so the easiest way is press the button.
Press the button.
Yeah. But of course, our marketing people talk a lot to people. What do you expect from an automated car? And they told us, yes, of course. If I get back time, I can relax. Yes. Ultimately, probably somebody wants to sleep, but just to be able to relax and to be your own passenger, so to speak.
What percentage of people saying they want to be doing something
I couldn't tell you the percentage, but they told you they want to do emails, they want to look, they want to browse the internet, they want to watch TV. You can even, if I can show you, you can even play some mini games in here. You could play Tetris here if you wanted. I think next time.
Oh, hey now.
It was a full break.
I saw what you did there, Mr. Distraction. Oh, you can play Tetris.
You can play Tetris. Okay.
Oh, here it comes. So
okay, you see we formed that emergency corridor, which is mandatory in Germany.
Okay.
There we go. Oh, what does he do? He hands over.
Oh, to me.
Yep.
Got it.
You
And
got
the
it.
belt just
And you
tugged
gotta
at
make
me.
exactly, because you never know, why is he coming? Is something strange up there or whatever?
Yeah.
That's why we hand over in that situation. Other people might do strange things, so it's better you drive. But after that, after he's gone,
And I can
if
hit
you
the
just
button
pick up again, it's not offering yet.
Oh, because it's too far away.
You gotta close up a little more. There we go. Now we can.
So in addition to the LiDAR, the radar, the stereo cameras, the cameras around the vehicle, the camera in the back, and the big GPS, another input point are the mics in the car.
Mics. Yep.
Joe, this was a great experience. I really appreciate this.
my
Thank
pleasure.
you so much.
Okay, so that's all that video. Mm-hmm. What were your impressions of that system, how it works, and the comparison to what we have?
I'm thinking of the takeover point, the times when the level 3 said you have to take over versus in our car, and I can't really make much of a distinction.
It won't change lanes,
Okay.
and you can't activate it unless you have a lead car about 100 meters in front of you.
Okay. You're right. That sounds like a very German rule.
Right. And, since they're taking responsibility, they want it to be,
They want it to make sense in their home country. I mean,
well, and they want it to be, it's got to be under 40 miles an hour in traffic and not change lanes. And in that situation, it will do everything. Mm-hmm. As long as you need it to do nothing, it will do everything.
okay.
That's kind of my take on it.
Okay. It is a little paradoxical.
Its reaction to emergency vehicles is good. I'd like a more clear picture of that from Tesla.
Yeah. Was that new?
Yeah, so that's something you can do in level 3 that we can't.
Right. Legally, you can't.
Right. Well, and the screen won't let you do some of the games and things because it would be distracting as a driver. So that is, a feature, and it does, you can do that. One thing that's a little odd is they say you'll always have 10 seconds to react. And my thinking is, if it's an emergency, but they say, no, we'll give you 10 seconds, I don't know how that jives. Do they just take responsibility then if something bad did happen? Or 10 seconds is a long time to put your eyes back on the road if you need it.
Well, I'm guessing it varies depending on the scenario.
Yeah. Oh, so the takeover points that were kind of different were
Right.
the sun glare,
Yeah.
which can happen but hasn't in a while in Autopilot
I haven't seen
or
it.
FSD. And then the sloped curve, you couldn't put it back on because they were on a sloped curve, which I found kind of odd. Maybe it's more banked than what it looks like in the video, but it seems like the system is great if you don't ask it to do very much. And you don't ask it to handle any high-speed situations. It still nags you to pay attention every so often. If you were to play Tetris, you'd still be getting that beep.
I'm guessing this is just a concession. They probably think they're ready to release level 4, and the German government and the Bavarian government are saying no.
Well, yeah, that's very possible for where they are.
I can't imagine the paperwork that went into this, like just filing the application for this.
Well, in Nevada, it seems like it's more of a, oh, you want to do that? Yeah, okay, go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
California will be a bigger
Must be
deal.
right.
So after using Tesla's Autopilot FSD where it is right now at level 2,
Yeah.
do you feel like you would use this? Or, I mean, you said you really probably wouldn't bother using FSD day to day.
Right.
Do you think this is something you would use? It's a little more like Autopilot, but...
Well, logically, no. Because honestly, it seems like Tesla's level 2 is a little more advanced than theirs would be. If this is considered level 3, like some of the conditions that have to be satisfied for it to do a job you would do are a little more, it's a longer list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just to engage it, you have to be in more of a correct situation and on a properly mapped road and everything. Mm-hmm. The second clip we're going to look at is a video from Engadget, and they do a drive in the U.S., and it showcases some different situations than we saw on the test track.
To, well, bad traffic. We're actively hunting for bad traffic. The automaker is hoping to bring it to the United States and is actively working with California and Nevada to hopefully bring it here by the end of 2022. But they're also working on getting it ready for the United States, which means making adjustments to, well, for example, the trucks here. You know, they're different sizes than the trucks that you would see in Europe. And also the fact that people pass on the right here in the United States. That's a big no-no in Germany. And cut-ins. There's someone who did it now. He's going so fast. Now, what makes DrivePilot different from everything else on the road is that everything else in the United States is level 2. This is level 3. That means that the driver doesn't have to pay attention to the road when the system is enabled. But they'd still have to stay in the driver's seat, and they still have to be able to take over control of the vehicle in case the need arises. We're currently on Interstate 5. We're doing 65 miles an hour. It's too fast for DrivePilot though. We need to be doing 40 miles an hour or lower. We have to actively be in traffic in order to enable DrivePilot. But there are some other caveats. You have to be on the highway. The weather has to be nice. It can't be raining. It can't be freezing. And you can't change lanes. You have to stay in your lane while DrivePilot is enabled. But I don't think you'll really care if you can't change lanes if you're able to text and watch a movie or read a book or play video games, because the car is driving for you. So as DrivePilot disengages or is about to disengage, it warns you, gives you an audible visual warning, and then it also tells you why that it is disengaging. So as you take over, it'll say, for example, it'll tell you that the vehicle ahead of you is going faster than 40 miles an hour and it's pulling away. And at that point, you need to take over the vehicle and, of course, speed up because people behind you are probably very, very angry. If you are in DrivePilot mode and you want to take over, you can grab the wheel, you can turn it, you can press the button that is on the steering wheel. There are actually 2 buttons, one on each side. You can use the accelerator, you can use the brake. Every once in a while, it will tell you, it will remind you that at any moment, you might still have to take over driving the vehicle. It is a friendly reminder that even though the car is driving for you, at any moment you might have to take over the vehicle. And when you do have to take over, you have 10 seconds essentially. The first 5 seconds, not much happens. It's just telling you get an audible and a visual cue to take over. But then after 5 seconds, the vehicle starts to slow down. It will come to a complete stop within your lane. The hazard lights will come on, the doors will unlock, and it'll make an emergency call. Because the vehicle, Mercedes-Benz, believes that after 10 seconds, if you have not taken over the vehicle, you have become incapacitated. So if you have a heart attack, or if you faint, or you just pass out in general, the vehicle does all this in order to, well, keep you safe. So we're watching a video, well, the driver's watching the video while we're driving down the Interstate 10. You could watch a video. That's the thing you could do with DrivePilot, which you should never, ever, ever do with any level 2 system. Those systems, I don't care if whatever it's called, I don't care if it's hands-free, none of the level 2 systems on the road should be used with you not paying attention to the road. Level 3 though, with DrivePilot, you can actually do that. Now, this is really built for traffic jams, which, well, that makes sense because that's the worst part of driving, is being stuck in traffic. In order to achieve all this and to have the safety that Mercedes-Benz requires for its vehicles, there are redundancies. There are redundancies to steering and to braking. So if something goes wrong, you still have something that will steer and brake the vehicle. There are also additional sensors. There's LiDAR on the vehicle. There's extra radars. There is an additional ECU that helps take the data from high-definition maps, live high-definition maps, and GPS in order to place the vehicle within inches in its lane. Now, all of this, it doesn't all necessarily part of a regulatory system, but it is what Mercedes believes makes this system very safe. And for Mercedes, if it's not safe, they're not going to do it. And they're very into the idea of having these redundancies and making sure this entire system works well, because if something goes wrong, Mercedes-Benz will take liability. They do say that they are liable for what happens while the vehicle is driving itself.
Okay, so now you've seen that. That's a little different look than what we saw yesterday. It's actually in the U.S., and you see it in more typical U.S. traffic.
That video for me, compared to the last one, was a lot more illuminative of of how the fault systems work.
Okay.
And how just the visuals that were brought in were very helpful in understanding that, this failure occurs, this functionality takes over, and that made more sense to me visually than the last one.
As far as the roads are wet, so we're going to disengage or
Yeah.
bad weather or whatever.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. I didn't understand from the last video when they were going on about the car in front of you going more than 40 and you having to take over.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't understand the purpose of that, but then he went through it and said, well, they're assuming this condition and you got to move. You have to accelerate.
Right, and the system can't
Yep.
go over its 40-mile-an-hour
Right.
limit.
Like they explain that more completely.
So now that you have a better idea of Drive Pilot from these two videos and different looks at it, how do you think from a safety, usefulness comparison, it compares to what Tesla's doing with Autopilot, Navigate on Autopilot, and FSD kind of stuff?
Well, now I have a question about Tesla specifically. Like when the level 2 Autopilot disengages and there's no response from you, what does it do? Because we haven't tested that, because you shouldn't.
If you don't take over, if you get the flashes and the beeping and you don't take over, it will slow down to a stop and put the hazards on.
Okay.
So similar to what this does after its 10-second situation, but it will still, like this, keep you in the lane. It will just eventually slow you down. It will give you a strike mark
Sure.
if you don't take over, but
Sure, you
won't,
get demerits. That's fair.
yeah, but you won't. It won't just throw up its hands and like, well, you're on your own.
Yeah.
So it will slow you down and stop you and be beeping at you the whole
Okay.
time.
So it's similar
Yeah.
in terms of behavior there, because I wasn't aware of that feature. You may have gone over it and I missed it, but in terms of usefulness and safety, again, for me as a market, I don't, you know what I mean? Like it's not really intended for me, but if I am living in LA and I'm in a single lane for 90 minutes going one way, this would be so invaluable trying to get work done.
Yeah. Well, you used to commute with the
Right.
Model S more often
Yeah.
than you had with the Y.
Pre-COVID, yeah.
And the Model S had the Mobileye system, AP1, and now the Model Y has, Tesla's newer Autopilot and Navigate on Autopilot. So you have been in stop-and-go traffic on the way to and from work
For sure.
through snowstorms with Autopilot,
Yep.
and where it did similar functions, but you weren't technically allowed to take your eyes off the road.
Right.
So the big distinction there is a regulatory body has said, well, it's doing the same thing that our car does. You don't have to look.
Right.
Because even in those situations, at least for me in heavy traffic times, you get the occasional nag, but it's not nearly as often.
Right.
But the car basically just handles all of the traffic. And I think the Blue Cruise and Super Cruise do that as well.
Sure. No, and that would be invaluable in that environment, especially since it rarely rains there anyway.
That's true. Yeah.
And it's never dealing with snowstorms or anything that would interfere with, sort of their internal requirements.
So the big selling point on this is regulatory approval to do that hands off, eyes off.
That would be a big sell point for me if I still commuted, because otherwise that time's just sort of wasted.
Yeah.
And once you get, a taste of not wasting that time, you'll probably pay a lot to keep that away.
Sure.
And it's also, and I keep bringing this up, specific to persons with disabilities, because if you have a condition that's, being managed, but sometimes you might, like if you have epilepsy, what if you have a seizure in the car? What if you can't take over?
Well,
it'll turn the hazards on. It'll coast to a stop. You're in a better position than if you were just...
Only if you're in their level 3.
Yeah, if you're in their level 3.
In these distinct situations. Now, maybe their level 2 has something like that too, but...
Right.
One of the things I was watching, basically this system does lane keeping and adaptive cruise, but it takes responsibility.
Yeah.
Your parents' car, which is a Corolla from 3 or 4 years ago.
Yep.
I used it on a road test a few years ago. And I found that to have pretty good lane keeping and adaptive cruise. Now that's on a 3 or 4 year old Corolla, and I would think you could, beef up those systems to essentially do this.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, on one hand, it's a good step and we're, kind of working towards safer roads and autonomy. On the other hand, comparing it to a Corolla from a few years ago and that system, is it really that miraculous?
Logically, no. But if you're talking about a user like my mother, I can't guarantee you she's used that.
Well, that's true.
I mean,
I used it when I drove it. But.
well, I know, but I don't think she's aware of that feature necessarily.
Right. I'm just saying if the technology exists in that car and it can do the major functions of this without, the LiDAR system and, all the extra bells and whistles.
Yeah.
Is it really that difficult of a problem to solve? And
From an engineering perspective?
well, the parts they're taking over, yes.
No, not really. It's just a logical extension of what's already on the market.
I guess that's where, the level 3 thing is they're taking responsibility, but you are still getting occasional nags. You are still getting requests to take over, and it's coming to the U.S. at the end of 2023.
Sure.
Apparently.
Well, they got it in the country.
So they got it in the country, and like I said, I'm all for safer roads however we get there. I just feel like this might be a lot of headline grabbing without really any mind-blowing tech.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to double down on my hypothesis from yesterday and say Mercedes has probably got level 4 figured out, and this is a compromise with the government because
they're German.
Well, not because they're German. I'm not sure.
No, I mean, because of the German regulation system.
Yeah, because level 4 would be such a leap forward in the market generally. I think if you had that all ready to go, and based on what they have lined up, they probably have a lot of it figured out, but are not permitted to engage it until they have data from level 3. Like, they're just... Because the government regulates this stuff reactively, they're real nervous about it because they don't understand it.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing the regulation is a big part of whatever. Like, there's no regulation that exists for this until recently in that country, probably. So I don't think you can come out the gate and say, yeah, we can do full self-driving level 4 and have the government let you when they don't even know what you're talking about.
That could be. I mean, I think the really tough thing is understanding. I mean, Tesla does everything out in the open. So it's really easy to see where they are. Yeah. They do have new versions they're testing that we haven't seen. But for a consumer to be in the know on what's going on in the back end, or they have their autonomy days or whatever.
Yeah. And they put out
we kind of see where they're working.
And they put out the specs for their connector and all that stuff.
Yeah. Other companies generally don't do that kind of thing. So, yeah, it could be that, like you said, they might have, we're all ready to go. We just need the time and maybe the market to be right and the regulations to be right to do more.
No, it's just my prejudice on, like, how regulation tends to react very slowly to new ideas.
Having tested FSD, having used Autopilot on the roads and stuff, if Tesla got the approval to do this level of level 3, where it's going to, on the highway, maybe up to a certain speed, do hands-free, eyes-free, no nags or whatever, would you feel confident that they're at this stage as well?
Yeah. Well, I would. That's the thing. Like, when we were talking about FSD, and I was saying, well, I wouldn't really use this feature. If I were commuting, I still probably wouldn't. I would just be using the autopilot parts. But then when you change the game and allow me to answer emails instead, or stop wasting my time just driving, that's I'm way more open to that as a new idea than just using FSD without
around city streets and things.
Yeah, without being able to attend to something else.
So if Tesla put the same, for lack of a better word, shackles on their system and said level 3 for this situation, you would be comfortable using it. You don't think there would be a safety difference, even though they're only using cameras, from your experience with it?
I don't think it would be that different, honestly. I would definitely pilot it, do a pilot program in the spring when all the ice is melted.
Well, sure, yeah.
And
But there again, here
I
they're
would
saying,
give it
you know,
ideal
good
conditions.
conditions.
Yeah. If I gave it ideal conditions and it worked, then I would keep coming back to it. I would keep using it because it would save me time.
Okay. So the distinction is the liability and control level.
Yeah.
That's been approved.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
For me, yeah.
Well, that makes sense. I don't think that's going to happen with Tesla because I think they want to approve a whole bunch of stuff at once.
Mm-hmm.
So piecemealing things out, maybe that's not the right approach, but
I think they're going to get pushback on that.
but we'll see. That's an excellent perspective, so thanks for joining. I really appreciate getting it because I'm all in this headspace, and having a fresh set of eyes and understanding how someone else might want to use one of these systems and why level 3 could be a big asset for these conditions is good to know. A couple last minute thoughts that I want to get your opinions on, and I think Motoman said it best when he said,
Well, number one, this is a sizable baby step on the road to autonomy.
and these are the first baby steps. They're the baby steps we need to take toward an autonomous, safer future. And that is, someone's got to get approval for some stage and get the ball rolling. So that's good. And Ellie sees a good use case for this that, frankly, I didn't. That if you can get some time back and they say they're in control, then, you know, maybe getting some work done on the way home on a commute or relaxing and reading a book is worth that time and worth that distinction. But I see this as very low-hanging fruit in that the question I have for them is, what are they trying to accomplish? And what are any of these autonomous driving features or assisted driving features trying to accomplish? If you're trying to cross a smooth mountain lake in good conditions, you need to have a watertight vessel and some propulsion and some basic functions. But if you're trying to cross the ocean in all sorts of conditions, you're going to need to do all that stuff and a lot more. So if you set your sights on crossing the ocean, you get that crossing the mountain lake for free. That just is one of the steps you need to accomplish. And it seems like not just Tesla, but Blue Cruise, Super Cruise, all the other systems out there are shooting for that cross the ocean goal, in that, at least on the highway, creating systems that will do the bulk or all of the driving in those scenarios. One of my favorite channels to watch is the Mach-E Vlog, and they've done a lot of road trips, and Patrick spends a lot of time on Blue Cruise hands-free. Really seems to enjoy it. EV Dave now has the Ford Lightning, and he's using some of the hands-free features in that as well, in roads that are pre-mapped. And again, these are level 2 systems, but they seem to be taking on a bigger challenge. And that brings up another question I have. You know, I was talking with Ellie about how the Corolla seemed to have a lot of the abilities that this system has at level 2 or level 3. And obviously that's not quite in the same ballpark as these other systems, but I'm talking about just the general basics of technology were there several years ago in a much cheaper car. And in these videos, there's a lot of talk about the sensor suite, all the different sensors and LiDAR and ultrasonics and extra cameras and rain sensors and things like that. But there's no real talk about how or if all of these are being used for their level 3 systems, or how these systems are talking to each other, or what gets weighed more when the car is making choices. And I think that's another interesting thing with all of these systems is what equipment is on the vehicle, and is the vehicle system using that, and how is it being weighed? Tesla's pretty upfront about how they talk about this in their autonomy days. And then we see things like the Polestar 3, which is coming with this elaborate LiDAR and sensor pack, but no real indication of how it's going to be used or implemented to make driving safer. It's just there. So I think that aspect is pretty interesting. And then there's the safety requirements of when does the vehicle nag you. Originally, a lot of Tesla owners got annoyed because you had the steering wheel nags. And, Autopilot's great, but I don't want to be nagged all the time. They should really have eye tracking like Super Cruise was going to have and now has, and Blue Cruise was going to have and now has. And so Tesla implemented the eye tracking as well. But they kept the steering wheel nags because it's safer to be more engaged. It would be great if they could turn those off, but if they feel like that's the safest way to go, then that's clearly how they feel about it. And that gets to the question of when these systems are approved by regulators, who do you trust? Do you trust the automakers? Do you trust the regulators? This is a very safety critical issue. So I can see why Mercedes is staying at 40 miles an hour and under and all the other limitations. But I find the distinction, especially among a lot of people of, well, it's been approved, so therefore it's perfectly safe, to be very odd. In that companies that have not really demonstrated from their user interface or some of the other elements, their app integration, things like that, they've not demonstrated any prowess for having good software, are suddenly completely trustable with hands-free driving just because it's been signed off by regulators. But that gets into a more, are you the kind of person that trusts that or not? But it's just very odd to me that specifically Tesla, who by most people's standards is way ahead on the software front with their UI, with their app, all that kind of thing, is so scrutinized when they don't say you can take your hands off the wheel. Yet these companies that don't have as good of software but have approval for taking your hands off the wheel, it's just, okay, well, we'll trust it now. And the same people who are saying this is unsafe are just like, well, someone approved it, and that's fine. On the other hand, that doesn't make it necessarily unsafe. I just find that attitude really crazy. But that's kind of my tangent on this whole thing. To bring it back to Mercedes, it's great that we're taking this baby step, but it feels a little bit like that third place meme where the guy gets the medal and he's all braggadocious and everything about it, and then you see that he's just accomplished third place, which there's nothing wrong with that, but like I said earlier, I think these other systems are shooting for a much higher goal, so celebrating this very achievable status and taking control when there's not much that's going to happen is kind of a headline grab and not really that big of a deal. But that's my take on it. Let me know what you think. We're kind of in this fog between levels where some systems can do some things, some can't, and the levels are relatively arbitrary too and may change over the coming years. So I guess the good thing is it's all a push for safer roads, and I think that's something we can all get behind. So thanks for sharing your thoughts. I hope you guys found this interesting. Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments. Have a great day, happy road tripping, and be safe when you're using any of these systems.